Welcome to Shahnameh, Book of Kings. Today we continue with the Reign of Khosrow Parvis. Many of the Persian soldiers threw themselves on the mercy of the Chinese emperor. His brother, Tovorg, came to the emperor and said, "You are like a warlike lord. Though many Persians have appealed to us for the quarter, their army is making its way to Iran. If they escape, this will shame you forever, and your soldiers and the people will laugh at you." The Chinese emperor's face clouded with fury, and he said, "Hurry and get an army together and see how far they've gone. When you catch up with them, don't use force at first, but try to see what persuasive talk will do. They don't know how we go about these things. It may be that you can break their determination by talk. Speak kindly to them, make much of them, treat them respectfully and chivalrously. But if one of them should attack you, play the man, and don't hesitate to fight. Make mar of their graveyard and its earth as bright as pheasants' feathers with their blood." Tovorg set off with 6,000 Turkish cavalry, and on the fourth day caught up with the Persians. When their lion-hearted leader saw them, she felt no anxiety. She hurried over to the leader of the caravan of the camels and had the baggage placed behind the troops, and then inspected the plain where it was likely that a battle would be fought. She donned her brother's armor and mounted a high-stepping charger. The two armies drew up their forces face to face, and every man there was ready to sacrifice his life. Tovorg, whom the emperor referred to as an old lion, was at the head of his men, and he called out to the Persians, "Isn't that noble woman somewhere in your ranks?" Because Gordyeh was dressed in heavy armor, Tovorg did not recognize her, and once again he called out, "Where in this company shall I find the sister of the murdered king? I need to talk with her both about the days that are gone and about new matters." Gordyeh replied, "I am the person you are looking for, and I'm ready to ride my horse against a ravening lion." When Tovorg heard her and saw her seated on her war horse, her mane as threatening as a lion's, he was astonished, and he said, "The emperor has chosen you from all his realm, so that you will be a reminder to him of that great night ballroom. He said that if you hurry and listen to his words, he will reward you handsomely. He said to me, 'Hurry to her, and tell her that if she is not pleased with my offer, then I can change my mind. Talk to her and come to an agreement with her, and only if she won't accept your advice should you detain her.'" Gordyeh said, "Let us move aside from the main body of the army. There I'll answer everything you've said." Tovorg came forward from his troops to where the valiant warrior stood. When she saw that he was alone, this resourceful woman glared at him from beneath her dark helmet. "You saw Bahram. You admired him as a horseman and a warrior," she said. "He was a mother and a father to me, but his days have come to an end. Now I shall test your mettle and fight against you. If you think I am ready for a husband, tell me, and we'll see if there is a husband who pleases me." She urged her horse forward, and Gostahm rode behind her. She lunged with her lance at Tovorg's waist and split the fastening of his armor, piercing his body. Yelin Sinha led her troops in a general attack, and the Chinese army was thrown into confusion. Many were killed or hurled to the ground or wounded. The Persians pursued them for 2 parasangs, and few of them remained mounted. The plain was like a river of blood, with headless bodies and others sprawling in the dust. After her victory, she crossed into Persia, and there wrote a letter to her brother Gordyeh, explaining all that had happened to Bahram and herself. At this time, Khosrow Parvis sent a message into Khorasan and said to him, "Speak with no one on your journey, but go straight to the Lord of the Marches, Gostahm, and say that he is to come to me as soon as he reads my letter." When the messenger reached Khorasan, he went into Gostaham's court and repeated the king's message. But knowing that Khosrow Parvis was young and bloodthirsty, when Gostahm received this order, he gathered his forces together and went to the cities ruled by men of authority, visiting Sari, Arnol, and Gorgon. In a drunken rage, The king killed Gostahm's brother Bandai, and when Gostahm heard about this, he bit his hand, dismounted from his horse, tore at his clothes, and heaped dust on his head. He knew that the king wished to destroy him, in revenge for his part in the death of his father Hormazd. He rode like the wind, lamenting and mourning, into the forest of Narvan, gathering men as he went. Near the mountains at Armol, he hid his army in the woods and began a series of raids on the area. Wherever there were men without work, he gave them bread, and they joined with him. Wherever he heard that a king's troops were nearby, he attacked and destroyed them. Meanwhile, Jordu went to Khosrow Parvis and told him of his sister Gordieh's exploits, and of how she had defeated the emperor's forces at Marv. Gostahm too heard that Bahram's days had come to an end, and that Gordyeh had left China's savage ruler and defeated his forces in battle. Gostahm led his forces out to welcome her, and when she heard of this, Gordyeh and her chief adviser set off from Amu. When he saw her troops in the distance, Gostahm urged his horse ahead of the main body of his men. He came before Gordyeh, lamenting for Bahram, and told her of the grief for Bandai, wiping his tears away with the sleeves of his robe. He saw Yalan Sina and Izod Goshap, and as he wept he dismounted from his horse. He told them how the king had killed Bandai, and how evil days had befallen him. He said, it was as though the king had forgotten that he is the son of Bandai's sister, and that Bandai had shed his own blood for him. He cut off Bandai's hands and feet, just as one would expect from a man of his nature. What hopes can you have of such a man? He will do worse than this to you and your friends, and meat will be cheap in the town when the butchers you. Soon as he saw Yalan Sina in the distance, he'll be eager for revenge because you were Bahram's commander, and it was through him you became powerful in the world. Whoever knows Khosrow Parvis avoids him. The best thing for him is a sharp knife at his throat. But join with me and we'll plan something. Hoping to save themselves from harm, all those who heard him accepted his suggestion. Then he spoke earnestly to Gordyeh about Bahram's exploits, and at his words she softened, and many thoughts filled her mind. All of her men went over to Gostahm, and hope brightened their dark foreboding. One day, Gostahm said to Yalan Sina, "What would this woman say to being married?" Yalan Sina replied, "I'll prepare her mind for the idea." Seeking out Gordyeh, he said, "I know the world, and I have seen you are a wise woman. It was right that you put off the emperor and chose to come back to Persia. What do you think of Gostahm as a husband? He's the king's uncle and a powerful commander." Gordyeh answered, "If I take a Persian husband, my family won't die out." Yalan Sina gave her to Gostahm, who was a fine warrior and of noble lineage. Gostahm thought her as sweet as a fresh apple, and in his good fortune he had no suspicions of disaster. His days were renewed in fighting against the armies the king sent, and as they were defeated, his confidence increased. As time passed, the king became more alarmed by Gostahm. One day he burst out to Jordu. "Gostahm was married to Gordyeh? Her warriors went over to him, and I think they did it on her advice. One of my informants has come from Amal and told me of everything they've kept hidden." He talked in this way until night fell, and the men's eyes grew weary and tired out by his words. As the servants brought candles and wine, he cleared the hall of strangers and sat alone with his adviser, Jordu. The two of them talked over the business of Gordyeh at length, and Khosrow said, "I've sent any number of armies against Amal, and the men have either been killed or returned wounded and complaining about their misfortune. I can only see one solution to this, because so far my plans have weakened the crown and throne. When Bahram Chubana forgot his duty, Gordyeh always supported us. I've an idea, but don't spread it abroad. I must write a letter, Gordyeh, one that's as beguiling as a stream of wine in the Garden of Paradise. I'll say to her, 'I shall be your friend everywhere and in every way. For a long time my tongue has not revealed the secret of my heart, but now it's time to speak out, and Jordu is my confidant in this. Find some means to get rid of that miscreant, Gostahm. If you can put him beneath a gravestone, my heart and household are yours. When you have done this, I'll give provinces to your army and your companions, every one you wish, and they will rule in those lands. You will have the golden chamber in my women's apartment, and all my desire for vengeance will be at an end. I swear I will do all these things. I will add more oaths to this oath, and if I break my word, may all my alliances fail. Jordu responded, Long may you flourish as shining as Venus in the sign of Virgo. You know that compared with my life, I set no value on my soul, and my children or my land and friends, precious though they are to me. I'll send someone with this letter to Gordyeh, and make her dark soul bright again. I shall send my own wife, and this will allay any suspicions. This is a woman's work, especially a clever woman. The more I consider this, the more I see the message must be sent to my sister. This matter will soon be over, and to your advantage we must do neither less nor more than you've said. Khosrow was overjoyed when he heard this, and all his worries disappeared like the wind. He asked that paper and ink made from musk he brought from the treasury, and then he wrote a letter as lovely as a garden as a rose, whose petals are like the beloved's cheeks. It was filled with promises and oaths, adulations and advice, and when the ink on the greeting had dried, the letter was sealed with black musk, imprinted with the name of King Khosrow Parvis. Jordu also wrote a letter filled with advice and other matters. The king's letter was placed inside his, and the two were wrapped in silk. His resourceful wife heard all these words, took the package, and rode to the forest of Narvan as one woman bearing a message to another. Gordyeh's face lit up like the springtime to see her. They talked about Bahram for a while, and tears dropped from their eyes. Then the messenger handed over her husband's letter, with the king's hidden inside it. When the lion-hearted woman saw the king's missive, it was as if she saw the moon before her. She smiled and said, If someone has 5 friends, this will be no trouble. She kept the letter secret from the court, but read it to the 5 of her confidants, who took one another's hands and swore to aid her. She hid the 5 in her sleeping apartments. When the night came, she extinguished the lights and placed her hand over her husband's mouth. The 5 accomplices rushed to the bedside and struggled with the man, who was drunk, until finally they suppressed his cries and smothered him. The town was soon in an uproar, and fires were lit in the streets. When they heard the noise, this intrepid woman put on her Byzantine armor. She called her Persians to her in the darkness and told them she had killed Gostahm. Then she showed them the king's message, encouraged them to be of good heart. Her men acclaimed her for what she had done and scattered jewels on the letter. This fearless woman asked for ink and pen case and sat with her advisers. She wrote a letter to the king concerning his enemies and allies. She began with praise of those who cleansed their hearts of vengeance and continued, The deed that the king commanded has been accomplished, and all that his allies would wish has come to pass. Gostaham's forces are in disarray by the grace of the world's king. What orders have you for me now? What will you demand of your slave? When the letter reached Khosrow, his approval of Gordyeh flourished again. He summoned an eloquent messenger, one who knew all the ancient stories, and wrote a letter as beautiful as a painting by the Chinese master Arzang. In it he summoned her to his court, and called her the moon's diadem. The messenger came to Gordyeh like the wind, and told her what Khosrow had said, and when the lion-hearted woman read the king's letter, she was like a rose that blossoms in springtime. She mustered her troops, and gave them their provisions, and at daybreak the baggage was loaded. A great company of men came out to greet her, and when she reached the court, she found the king's heart filled with anxiety to please her. She and her chieftains brought before him innumerable gold coins and jewels, brocades woven with gold, crowns and belts, golden thrones and golden crowns, and all these were counted out to the king's treasure. The king looked at this elegant cypress, whose face was as lovely as the spring, and whose walk was like that of a pheasant, that her conduct was taken to the harem, where she was given a rank higher than all his other women. Then he sent for her brother, her vizier, Jordu, and asked for her The king looked at this elegant cypress, whose face was as lovely as the spring, and whose walk was like that of a pheasant, and had her conducted to the harem, where she was given a higher rank than all his other women. Then he sent for her brother, his vizier Jordu, and asked for and obtained her hand in marriage, according to the rites of their religion. He rewarded her companions with robes of honor, as well as gold and silver and every kind of wealth. Many long days passed, and Gordyeh wanted for nothing. One day, when Khosrow Parvis was drinking wine with the wise men of the court, and with his noblemen and warriors, a goblet was discovered with the name of Bahram written on it. The king ordered that it be thrown away, and everyone cursed Bahram, the goblet, and the man who had brought it there. He said, "Let Bahram's town Ray be trampled beneath war elephants' feet, its inhabitants driven out, and let it be turned to a wasteland." His vizier said to the king, "You are a living memorial of the Khainid kings, but consider, Ray is a great town, and it would be wrong for it to be trampled beneath elephants' feet. God would not approve of this, and neither would the wise men of the world." The king replied, "Then the place needs an ill-natured governor, an incompetent fool, someone who is ignorant and foul-mouthed." A courier called Bahram said, "If the king wishes, we will look for such an incompetent, but we need some kind of guide." Khosrow said, "He should have red hair, a crooked nose, an ugly face. He must be an infamous man with a sallow complexion, someone who's malevolent, short in stature, his heart filled with anguish, base in his nature, vengeful with a lying tongue. His eyes should be green and squinting. He should have big teeth and should lope along like the road like a wolf." The priests were astonished to hear Khosrow talk in this way, and wondered how they would find such a man. People searched the world, inquiring among both rich and poor. Then one day a man came to the king. "I saw someone of this description on the road. If the king commands me, I shall bring him here, and he can be sent to Ray." The king gave orders that the man be brought to the court, and when he entered, everyone laughed at his appearance. Khosrow said to him, "Well, fool, tell us about how evil you are." The man replied, "I never stop doing evil things, and there's not an atom of wisdom in me. Tell me to do one thing, and I'll do another, and I'll fill men's bodies and souls with anguish. I live off lies, and I'm incapable of doing good." The king said to him, "And may your evil star keep you that way." His name was written down in the court records as the governor of Ray, and the shameless man rose to greatness because he was so ugly. He was given a motley army and went off to his new post, taking his evil reputation with him. When he arrived in Ray, he banished all shame from his heart. He gave orders that all the gutters on the roofs be torn down, and he took pleasure in watching this be done. Then he had all the cats killed, which annoyed the city leaders. Everywhere he went, he had a herald go in front of him shouting, "If I see a gutter in place or a cat in a house, I'll burn the house down and stone its inhabitants." He searched everywhere, and if he found as much as one silver coin, he made its owner wretched. Mice took over the houses. People despaired of the city. When it rained, there were no gutters to carry away the downpour, and there was no one to care for the city. And that is how this ugly, shameless wretch, sent from Khosrow's court, caused a flourishing city to fall into ruin. The sun beat down on men's heads, and all the city was filled with pain and anguish, while the world ignored their sufferings. This went on until spring, and the month of Farvaden, when the land is adorned with flowers. The world becomes moist with dew, and the mountains and valleys are filled with tulips. The nobility went to their gardens to enjoy themselves, and the foothills of the mountains were dotted with deer and sheep. When Khosrow opened the gates to his gardens, he saw the fountain was filled with doves. He ordered that trumpets be blown, and bowls filled with sweet scents were sent down there. He and his courtiers sat on the grass and called for wine, while they chatted amicably together. Gordyeh brought a little kitten, which she had dressed up just like a child. Sitting on a pony on a gold saddle ornamented with jewels, the kitten had earrings hanging from its ears, and its nails had been painted as red as tulips. Its face was as sweet as springtime. Its black eyes looked sleepy because it had drunk some wine. A golden bridle hung from the pony, and Gordyeh led the kitten around the garden as if it were a child. The king of Persia burst into laughter at this sight, and all his courtiers copied him. He said to Gordyeh, "My beauty, what do you want from me? Tell me what it is you wish for." This resourceful woman bowed before the king and said, "Great king, give me Ray. Consider wisely and free its sorrowful inhabitants' hearts from their grief. Recall that shameless wretch from Ray. Know him for what he is, a faithless, evil man. He has driven the cats from their houses and destroyed the town's gutters one by one." Khosrow laughed at his wife's voice and said, "You are as lovely as the moon and strong enough to destroy an army. Recall that malevolent wretch, the Ahriman from Ray." And so her good fortune grew in the shadow of the royal tree. Khosrow Parvis' bezidden wife, Miriam, bore him a son, Shiru. But the court astrologers predicted that the country would suffer as a result of this child, and that the army would never acclaim him as their leader. And here's where I end my reading for today. But I'll be back tomorrow with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends.